The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for visiting us in this quite turbulent and interesting time for Georgia and for the channel Stride to the Forward. I mean, where do we stand as a country so far on our way to EU integration? What's the status right now?
The status is that Georgia is a candidate country since last December. That was a great historic step for both sides, Georgia and the European Union. And the next step would be to open accession negotiations, to get a decision by the European Union that we are ready to open accession negotiations. However, the Georgian government has passed a law which is incompatible with European standards, and as long as this law stands, we will not open accession negotiations with Georgia. That's where Georgia stands.
Mr. Ambassador, when we planned this interview, there was still a small hope that this law would not have been passed. But GD decided otherwise. So what does this law change for Georgia?
Well, that is really a question more for Georgians. We think, and our thoughts were documented by the Venice Commission, which is the advisory group of the Council of Europe, of which Georgia is a member. Council of Europe is a standard setter in, let's say, democratic principles for the member states, including Georgia, including Germany, and all the EU member states are members of the European Council. So the Venice Commission wrote in its 24-page detailed opinion that it offered to Georgia as
legal opinion. It is
legal opinion.
It's definitely legal opinion.
Written by lawyers, for lawyers, read here by lawyers. And it said that this law is a gross interference with fundamental rights of Georgian citizens, rights that Georgian citizens have according to their own constitution, according to the European Convention on Human Rights, according to the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. Both of the two conventions I mentioned, Georgia has ratified, so Georgia is party to. And any lawyer, in fact, any citizen, anyone can understand a grossly disproportionate interference in fundamental rights is just something you shouldn't do. There are other ways to deal with the issue of transparency of foreign influence without grossly interfering in fundamental rights of the citizens.
However, the EU officials till this day, even after the passing of the law, they say that there is still room where the country could reverse its political course. How do you see that? What type of political will would it take to reverse this course?
Well, there's always room and the possibility to change course. Politics is a dynamic process, and so I can't speak for the Georgian government. The government has once before told us last year that the draft law was a mistake and that therefore it has been withdrawn. This time we told the government we still think it's a mistake. It wasn't withdrawn, it was decided on. But let's see what the future brings. I mean, let's be hopeful. On the agenda is Georgia's membership in the European Union. That's a wonderful, great prospect, in my opinion. It's up for the Georgians to decide whether they also think that's a wonderful, great prospect. And if they do, then we will somehow have to get over this law, because with this law, Georgia won't join.
Do you still have questions with the Georgian people, because we remember when the candidate status was granted for Georgia, the EU specifically and the EU's high officials specifically pointed out that it was because of Georgian people, because of their activities in the streets and because of their urge to be part of the European Union.
We think the Georgian population in its overwhelming majority is in favor of joining the European Union. That's what all polls show. That's what my personal experience showed. I've never met a Georgian who said, I don't think the European Union is for me. On the contrary, every day I meet people that say, we love the European Union and we would love to join.
You said, let's see what the future brings. Do you think future brings sanctions?
Sanctions are, is a broad term. It means a negative reaction. So, speaking on behalf of a member state of the European Union, our first reaction is to say very clearly that with this law, you can't be a member of the European Union. With this law, we will not open accession negotiations with the European Union. It's very simple. If you want to join the European Union, you have to meet our standard in legislation, norms and values. A state that joins the European Union takes over European law, European legislation. That's what it means to be a member of the European Union. It means to accept European legislation. This law is not in line with European legislation. So that's our first message. Then we have to say there were actions by the Georgian government, for example, this law, plus it's accompanied by a very severe criticism of the EU and of the United States of America. So if you want to join a union, but at the same time you criticize it as being somehow dangerous, global war party, it's not my term. I don't like the term. I don't think it exists. Then we have to ask ourselves, can we do business as usual? Are we now partners or are we no longer partners? That's up for the Georgian government to decide. I don't want to speak on behalf of other governments, but you've seen other governments' announcements.
We did.
Yes.
We did. Ambassador Fischer, sir, can we let me qualify in the following way? What might be the price Georgian people could pay for the suspension, let me be more optimistic in this regards, for not opening for the next step within the EU integration? I'm talking about official negotiations for the further. We're just losing time, or it's another opportunity what we will miss during this fantastic period?
Well, let me put it this way.
Please.
For over 30 years, Georgia has been on its own path, self-defined, of Euro-Atlantic integration. I think that's agreed, right? And
confirmed by our constitution.
Confirmed by your constitution, confirmed by successive governments. And there's been good progress on that path. There's been good economic progress. I would like to see things more positively. So much progress, so much good economic development, good development of society, in Georgia. Fantastic opportunity to join the European Union, one of the biggest, freest markets in the world, a space of democracy, liberty, a space of safety, security, a giant opportunity. And I still want to believe that if the Georgian people want that, we can make progress. for some reason, which I'm not able to fully explain, this law was decided, a rhetoric was chosen which is anti-European, a climate of fear is being spread, enemies are being identified everywhere, including us, Germany, France, Spain. Are we some kind of dangerous enemies now? I would say no. We're not the global war party, we're the global peace party. I could elaborate, but the European Union is a fantastic project of peace invented after bloody nationalistic wars, after genocide committed by Germany. So we're the global peace party. And all of a sudden, this strange atmosphere of fear, of enemies, of misinformation is coming up. I would like to focus on the strength of Georgia, the good macroeconomics numbers, your strong civil society. I'm a diplomat, I'm not here to take any position in domestic affairs, but it's a fact that your civil society is strong and vital. And every day for 4 weeks, we're seeing thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people coming to the streets and saying, I am a citizen of this country and I'm articulating my wish as a citizen to be part of the EU. It's quite heartwarming to see people carrying the European flag and say, this is a good project, this is what I want. So, to answer your question, yes, I'm optimistic that things can continue, but the accession process to the EU has nothing to do with family or how we feel or what our internal sentiment is. It's a legal process. You're not joining a family, you're joining an organization which has a contract, which has rules, and which has written rules for joining. And the main rule is you have to fulfill our standard. And we will be your partner, we will reach out our hand as we have for 30 years and say, if you want to join, here's our hand. We will help you join. We also give you a lot of support to join. And once you open accession negotiations, there's even more support. So it's called pre-accession support, let's call it. But you have to fulfill the standard. And if you tell us we are not willing to fulfill the standard, well, then that process comes to a halt. And there's always the opportunity then again to change your opinion, to say, yes, we are ready now to fulfill the standard. The example is Turkey.
Yeah.
With Turkey, everything has ground to a halt because Turkey has said on many issues, well, that's not the way we want to be. And we said, okay, then we will part as friends, but in this way you can't join the European Union.
Mr. Ambassador, does changing political course also mean changes in economic relations? For example, to talk about Germany specifically, would Germany like to have business relations with the country that has explicitly said that it doesn't want to
I would
join EU?
Look at two things. So one are business relations. Businesses have business relations. Germany doesn't have business relations. We have official relations and we give development aid. So let's talk first of all about the business. European Union is, with the USA and China, are the three big markets in the world. EU is perhaps, if you like, the best market if you believe in good social policy and good environmental policy.
And we believe in figures, sir.
And believe in figures.
Statistics, everything.
And have you looked at the stock price of the two big Georgian banks that are listed in London?
Yeah.
Markets tell us some truth.
Yeah.
Have you looked at the course of the lari recently? Tendency down for an importing country means the prices will go up for the citizens, for import goods. Have you looked at, now I have to look at my notes, the spread of the Georgian Eurobond versus US Treasuries?
We did.
Has gone up, which means credit is becoming more expensive. Markets are already reacting. And Europeans the EU companies do trade and invest mainly amongst themselves. So I would contend the best thing that can happen to the Georgian economy is to join this market. It's a single market. There are no more barriers, freedom of movement of personnel, goods, services, capital. You're part of a great market. It's a big economic opportunity. And in business sense, it's not a good idea to miss it. And as far as I know, most business associations here have also said that they would, or that they think it's unfortunate that there might be a delay or perhaps missing it. And then I'll add one more thing. The window for enlargement opened for Georgia when Russia attacked Ukraine. There are big debates in Europe, enlargement versus deepening. Deepening means having more decisions by majority vote rather than unanimity. Deepening means having one currency. Deepening means bringing other areas into a fully European competence.
More harmonization.
More harmonization. So some are for, some are against, and there's always been a debate: do we need enlargement or do we need deepening? Now we're saying we need both. And the best thing for us is that if our common space of security, democracy, and good economic development includes all those who, reasonably can say they're Europeans, and Georgians can say that, and who want. You have to want. And Georgia has wanted and said it wants. So that window is open. But that window can close too. It can be that governments come into power in European member states this year, next year, the next 5 years, who are less favorable to enlargement. It's not like a guarantee that's always there. Right now, of course, we say politically, Georgia has applied, we've made the offer, candidate status. It's practically open-ended, but political circumstances can change. It's important not to miss your historic opportunity. In French, we say a rendezvous. Sometimes you can miss a meeting point.
Going back to Elene's questions, Mr. Ambassador, so politics and business, it's splittable. We can divide some political issues and business issues. It means that Georgia is going to be in favor of EU and EU member countries in attracting investments, supporting local economic and business community. It will still go on after this law and changing the rules, or I don't know.
Well, it depends on business decisions, but I would contend that the clearer it is that Georgia is joining the European Union, the more business opportunities and investment you will have, especially from Europe. For European businesses, the safest investment is in the European Union. And I've witnessed it in many countries. There are many alternatives where to invest your money. And if it's in the EU, then people will say, that's pretty good for me. That's safe. It's a big market. It will grow. If Georgia is not in the EU, what will you be? A small market to begin with. German companies invest into big markets where there's lots of customers. Car factories don't go where there's 3.6 million customers. They go where there's 20 million, 50 million, right? And same for other industries. So giving up anything that harms the EU perspective, that makes it seem less certain or take longer time, my opinion is it's not good for business. Perhaps you will attract other business from other countries, but you will be a small market sort of in a rough, big, turbulent sea.
Mr. Fischer, please elaborate a little bit about the development aid that you also mentioned. We also try to give this perspective to the people.
Yes.
To see that this accession process, this harmonization process, or the deepening process that you have already mentioned, might be tough for the country, for the businesses.
Yes.
But this is not just telling people, telling the country, telling the business, go in the deep sea and swim and let's see whether you will survive or not. So what are some of the tools of the development aid that EU and Germany also, because we know some of the funds that are working with local NGOs here, with the small and medium businesses here. So let us sum up this developmental perspective as well for our viewers.
Yes, so Germany gives development aid or economic cooperation, and so does the EU. 25% of everything that comes from the EU comes from Germany, as you know. And over the past 30 years, Germany has invested about 2 million euros here in German taxpayers' money. I always like to remind people it comes from our German nurses and bus drivers and street cleaners and so on. It comes from the average German citizen with compliments, and you're very welcome. And we have an active portfolio of about 1 billion euros.
Which means active portfolio?
Which means projects that are
ongoing.
They're 4 or 5 year projects, and they're ongoing. We're, along with the US and Germany are the two biggest donors to Georgia, and of nation states, and the EU is the biggest. And a lot of that, so first of all, it's always based on partnership. If we're not partners anymore, well, we have to rethink. And a lot of it is based on preparing Georgia for European Union membership. If that is the basis of this business and that basis somehow is damaged, well, we have to rethink our projects too. Right now we're in reflection mode. We want to see how this continues, but we have to send a very clear signal that if it continues, that Georgia openly defies its own membership perspective, which it has through this law, and if it blames us for somehow being not a partner, then of course we have to rethink this partnership. That's where it stands.
For many things, for so unfortunately, this Russian law, as people in the streets are chanting, has become a watershed in EU-Georgia relations. What could be the next watershed? And do you think that could be 2024 elections? And should we think about having this perspective open for Georgia for that period? Because you mentioned very rightfully so that this window won't stay open for always.
We don't know whether this window will always be open. So elections are of course important for any country. We believe in democracy. The Georgian constitution prescribes a democracy. Free and fair elections are an essential requirement also for joining the EU. If there's any doubt about the election here, it will be another point where we have to say, well, that's not the standard that we expect, and it means no progress. So I just want to re-emphasize as a diplomat, I have no stake in who governs Georgia, right? And but that the elections are of key importance at this time when the population seems to be saying we're in front of a fundamental decision which way our country should go. That's clear. And from an EU perspective, it's one of the 9 points: free and fair and competitive election without interference, so the citizens of Georgia can really express their political will freely. And I don't think it's interfering in elections when I appeal to all citizens, this is your right, and in a way it's your democratic duty to inform yourself and make a decision and go vote. That's what we tell our own citizens. And as a citizen from a friendly country, that's my message to friends in Georgia. Make use of this vote. The future is in your own hands.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I'm trying to find what other tools we have as Georgian citizens other than standing in the streets in this situation to change the situation when the law has not been reversed.
But not here, maybe. But I have some kind request to a good friend of Georgia, Ambassador Fischer, that if he will find any kind of sign what or who is the global war party, he could share it with us, not as a diplomat, but as a friend, because we're trying to dig as much as we can. No sign.
I'm from the Global Peace Party, European Union. We're so busy making peace, trying to prevent war, trying to bring back peace where unfortunately war was brought by others, that we don't have time to look for the global war party, in particular because we think it's a phantom. In American English, you say it's a wild goose chase. You can look and look and look and you'll never find.
One final question from myself, and that's how we finish. Is there still time and space to have on these 9 preconditions? Or it's impossible to make this progress in this current situation?
With the law.
With the law, with the acting government.
The law is a violation of the 9 points to begin with. Yesterday the law was passed. We're sitting here a day after. There are other elements in the 9 points, but we have to say that the progress is almost zero. You know, the European Council, you can read this in the decision of the European Council. Everything is written. Nothing is a mystery. Said, candidate status is given on the understanding that these 9 points will be fulfilled. That means the candidate status is, in this formulation, in some way, connected to the fulfillment of the 9 points. That's what the European Council wrote down. And we see hardly any progress on any of the 9 points. In fact, we see a clear step away from the 9 points with the legislation. And we have to say there are 10 candidate countries now. And Georgia used to be a front runner, and now Georgia is at the end. It's the last car on the train. And time is short. It's the end of May.
From this standpoint, would you say it was a mistake to grant Georgia a candidate country status? And is it some kind of a trap now that
You're talking about
you
some
have
disappointment, or?
Yes, and from the EU side also to act because whatever decision it takes, it hurts the people as well, right?
No, it was not a mistake. I mean, we studied this whole thing very carefully. As I said, we want to reach out. We are in favor of enlargement. We don't want gray areas in Europe where outside powers who are against democracy, against peace, against a happy, balanced development of society, of the economy, with good social rules, good environmental rules, where they can interfere and play their games. And we know that that happens. That's why the European Union granted the candidate status. It was not a mistake. It's a good idea to spread this area of peace, democracy, and good development to Georgia. But the Georgian government has to want it too. I don't think we're in a trap. We're very interested in Georgia joining the EU. But look at the EU and look at Georgia. Who is it more important for? Well, that's for Georgian citizens to make up their mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your time and for visiting us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.